We are going to be talking about automations today, best practices for automations. We're also going to cover some basics, the core of automations. We're going to talk about the two big updates that were just released and how to implement automations into your workflow so that they work for you and they're making sense for what you're trying to do. So we're going to dive right in here in a second. My name is Lee Adkins. I'm the head of growth at Amplified Solutions and a longtime Follow Up Boss user. We've also got Caroline and Jeremy on with us today. Jeremy, first off, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Lee?
Good. I'm great. I'm great. Welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at Follow Boss?
Sure. So I've been supporting software for over a decade. I've been with Follow Boss for about a year and a half, and I'm a member of our success team. I live up in Maine, and it's a beautiful day here. Hope it's a beautiful day where everybody is.
Awesome. Perfect. And Caroline, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm a product manager here at Follow Up Boss. I've been on a few of these office hours talking about automations. Automations is one of the projects that I've been working really closely on. So I love hearing about how you guys are using it, and all of your feedback is just awesome. I've been with Follow Up Boss for almost 3 years, or a little over 3 years, which is great. And typically I'm in Denver, Colorado, but right now I'm in Newport, Oregon, enjoying the beach, which is really nice. But yeah, I'm excited to cover some automations today.
Awesome. Great. So we'll dive right in. I got a couple of quick housekeeping things and then we'll get right into automations. For one, these recordings are always streamed to the Follow Up Boss Success community. So they're always available there the moment that they start happening. They are also always up on the YouTube channel, typically within 24 hours. Sometimes a little, actually, usually a little more quickly than that. But definitely encourage you. I'm dropping a link right now into the Follow Up Boss YouTube channel. Definitely would encourage you to check it out and certainly subscribe and/or turn on alerts. So you can grab the recordings there. They also come out in the Friday emails, so you guys have a ton of options, and we always appreciate you guys tuning in or checking in. Also, if you guys could use the Q&A for your questions as we go, it helps us manage them better. If you drop them in the chat, they get lost when other people post stuff. So if you put them in the Q&A, it helps us enable we answer all the questions. But let's dive right in. And Caroline, if you could share your screen and just tell us at a core level, what are automations? Like, I think we all have what an automation is in our head, but what does an automation in Follow Up Boss do?
Yeah, let's just start from the top. So, what is an automation? So automations give you a way to create custom workflows that are applied to your existing leads automatically when something happens. So, in terms of what that something is, they can be set to run when you or someone on your team does something like changing a stage or adding a tag, or they can run when your lead does something like they've submitted a new property inquiry, or maybe they favorited something. So there's a lot of possibilities with automations. We'll obviously get through some of those, but a really simple example is something I'm showing here, which is, when you change the stage to nurture, we can start the buyer long-term nurture action plan. So that's just kind of like a simple example.
Great. And I like to tell people too, I think a lot of people got really excited about Zapier and third-party things like that can do some of this and certainly much more. But I think, I don't want to, it's not a dumbed down Zapier, but I think this is a much easier way to not use an additional platform that can break or be turned off, or a slight change in something makes things go kind of wonky. It's a pretty simple way to make some things happen. Can you get advanced with these? Absolutely. You can, if they have a phone number and they came in on Tuesday, then you can do crazy stuff. But, I think just the idea of something like this, like a stage change triggering an action plan, is really smart and really good. So, and Follow Up Boss comes with some automations, right? There are some, you don't just have to make them from zero. Some come stock. Jeremy, do you want to tackle a little bit some of the standard automations that come in Follow Up Boss?
Yeah. So having some automations built into Follow Up Boss, so just like off the shelf, out of the box experience for anybody who's just getting started with Follow Up Boss, or primer for those folks who've never used them before. We've got some really great selections here. So a couple of the top are a little bit more custom, but some of the ones that are pretty popular are sending the automated email on someone's birthday, because we have a trigger that fires off of dates stored in your Follow Up Boss custom fields. We can send a person an email on their birthday automatically, because Follow Up Boss can find that birth date and get them a quick email. We have a nice, it's a fun little template that's built in. And with anything in Follow Up Boss, the action plans and email templates can be customized. But if you, these can all be shared. I think Caroline's going to put this in the chat for you, so that you guys can just open this up and see how it can be used. The other ones that are really helpful to have right out of the box are, I really like the post-closing action plan. That's one that I kind of use as an example a lot to help you if you don't have the best process for after the close to maintain your client relationships. This is one of my favorites to kind of give you some basic tasks to stay on top of that relationship you just worked so hard to build, and strengthen it instead of letting it lapse. The action plan itself has got some great steps in it. Excuse me. And it's just gonna like asking for a review, like checking in after a month to see how the house is going. See, in 2 months, offering them some, sending a handwritten note to the customer to check out some things in their neighborhood they may not have had a chance to. And then at the end, this particular action plan closes and finalizes 10 days ahead of their year anniversary with a task to send them an anniversary card, maybe a gift to congratulate them on having their new home and being in their new home that you helped them get to. So there's tons of things here. Now, this post-closing plan is a little bit more optimized for a buyer. You could create one for sellers as well and have a little bit more custom things to stay in touch with your sellers and any other customers too.
And Jeremy, to that point, I want to just overemphasize to people that those are just reminders to you. So that's a great one to turn on and just let it go, because it's not just going to email a bunch of stuff to a bunch of people. It's just reminding you, hey, it's been a month since this person closed. You should check in with them. So I think that's a really nice, safe one that most people should probably just turn on and take a look at it. Caroline, yeah, right. If you could go back to that screen, I want to get through the rest of the basics, but I also want to show the times run. Now we're in a demo account, so there's not a lot of times run. And Chuck, just saw your question. Yes, that does mean it'll come in as a task in your daily email because it's creating a task. If you click on the times run, that number will be blue once it's run. It'll take you right to all the people it's run on. And I use this all the time to just check my automations. Like, let me check the person this has run on just to see what's happening. Are they getting a bunch of email? Is it working? Is there 1,000 people getting it or 5 people getting it? So that's a great way to do that if you are, an admin level user.
And if you're using, if you're looking into these profiles to kind of see what's happened and what's going on, we indicate like where an automation did something. So you can see for this one, we can tell that this note was added through an automation. And then here in the action plan section, we can see that it was started through an automation. So there's some of those indicators for you and for anyone viewing the profile to know kind of how something happened. It didn't just like mysteriously happen. So you can always look out for those indicators once you're on the page.
That's great. Cool. And Jeremy, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's a couple other built in.
No, one of the best parts about automations, I think, is it surfaced a lot about action plans not just being communication driven for some for newer folks using Follow Up Boss. And there's no reason that your action plans have to be. There's so much that they can do. But the other ones that I really love here are new inquiry for existing lead, follow up for 1 week. This is a way of getting, or the one where it's changing behavior after 14 days. These are intended for new leads to capture additional web traffic that Follow Boss can track through saved or viewed properties or additional properties that they're clicking on to freshen those leads back up, provide additional notifications, and even some fresh communication about that particular property that they clicked on. But these are fantastic ways of making sure that even if a lead's been in your system for a couple of weeks or months or even longer, these automations are going to surface them right up to you, let the bells and whistles go off, and do some stuff to re-engage with this person right away. So it can almost be like a new lead coming in. Having the viewed or saved property here with the conditions, with last activity and last communication being met, it's going to activate the action plan. And in this particular case, I believe there's 2 emails in this action plan that do go out automatically, but they also create tasks and provide notifications to the agent assigned. and this is, again, really just bringing it right front of mind as close as we can, basically trying to put it right in your face that this is somebody who has come back online and is looking again.
That's great.
And real quickly,
no, go ahead.
I wanted to touch on these website activities. So there's 3 basic website activities that can, trigger an automation to start. So we have the new inquiry, property saved, and property viewed. So if you have the Follow Up Boss pixel installed on your website, that's where we can start to pull a lot of this information in. So these are really great, touch points to have with your leads. So if you don't have the pixel installed, it's a really good idea to do that to start pulling some of this in. And then, alternatively, if you have these coming in through like a different integration, they will be picked up as well. So I just kind of wanted to touch on how these triggers actually happen. So that's basically, the website activity that we're referring to here.
Cool. No, that's a good point to add. And I think the other stock one is the bad number automation that comes with Follow Boss, I believe, automatically. So in this one, it's just if somebody comes in or a new inquiry is made and the person has a bad number, the short version is it basically sends an email that says something to the effect of like, hey, I think it has the number in it, and it literally says, we tried you at this number and couldn't connect. Is there a better number to reach you on? So another good kind of low pressure, whatever type of way to use an automation, say, hey, this guy doesn't have a phone number, and in this case has actually done something. So you can use this to help you get better data into your system. And again, it's pretty low touch, but pretty high value, because if you get someone's phone number, they're a better lead. Right. And I think what really powers this automation in particular is this condition for phone number is bad. So, if you're on a lead profile, I'm not sure if we have one in our test account here, but you can either automatically mark it bad like this, or you can, or if it's an invalid phone number when it comes in, it will automatically look like this. So that's what that condition is looking for, is it's looking for numbers that are invalid or that you've marked as bad. So that's kind of being done automatically for you at times. So, this is going to filter out everyone. That's going to do the filtering for you to make sure we're applying this only to the right people there. Cool. Are there any other, I don't have any on the top of my head, are there any others that come with the system, or Caroline, do you want to dive into how to make one? Because obviously you can make your own. Yeah, I think there's a few more in here. I think actually almost all of these come with your account. They're going to be defaulted to off. But yeah, if you haven't turned any on, I would start with the ones that are in there and just go through and preview what they do. These are all pretty safe to turn on in terms of filtering for the right people. The conditions are filled out there, and the action plans, or like any of the communications that are sent out, are pretty general. So they're safe to turn on, but it's always better to add a bit of customization. I don't know if there's any others in particular you guys want to talk through, but we can start with kind of just building out a simple automation. Yeah, I think it's good to start to do one from zero. And then we can tackle the some of the new things that are added as well.
Yeah,
And
let's
for
do
quick
it.
point of clarity, admin automations is where you find this. You'll have to be an admin level user or an owner or an admin level. I believe, is that right? Can individual users do
Yeah,
automation?
so everyone's going to see this automations page, but in order to turn any of them on or create or edit any of them, you'll need to be an admin. But if you're an agent or a lender logging into Follow Up Boss, you're going to see this automations page and you'll be able to view the automations and what they're doing. So, you know, kind of like what's happening behind the scenes, kind of going back to, you know, within the profile, you can see what the automation did. You can also see a whole list of them on this page.
Cool. Yeah, and you can see which ones are on and off. You just can't modify.
Exactly.
Great. Very cool. So yeah, to make one, admin automations, and then look, there's a big blue button that says add automation.
Yeah, it says add automation. So we'll go ahead and click that. So I think let's just start with a really simple one, maybe based off of a stage being changed and just kind of work through that. And then we can talk maybe about a few of the new things that we've added.
Cool.
So let's start with like a really basic one that I think is really, really powerful at the same time, which is changing the stage to nurture and starting the buyer long-term nurture action plan. So, you know, every time anyone in the account is changing the stage to nurture, we can have this automatically applied. That way it's not an extra click that can be forgotten along the way. So we're first just going to give this a name, and I'll just say stage change to nurture, and we'll save that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick our trigger. So this is the when this happens part of the automation. So for this one, we're going to choose stage changed, but here's all of your other options. So we'll click stage change, and then we're going to click nurture. So this is now reading when the stage is changed to nurture. The next piece of this is the conditions. And the conditions are kind of the criteria that must be met by the lead in order to go on to the action step. So this is kind of like the filtering step, because you might not want this to happen to every lead when the stage is changed to nurture. You might want to kind of narrow down this group a bit more. So for add conditions, you're going to see we have all these different condition options. What you might notice is that they're really similar to what you see within SmartList. These are the same filtering options, and it's really the same concept of filtering for particular leads. So for this one, I think some of the really powerful conditions that I see used is last communication. It's also a really powerful one for your SmartList, but you might want to filter out people that you haven't communicated with in maybe or filter for people you haven't communicated with in maybe 10 days. So this is saying if the stage is changed to nurture and we haven't talked to them in 10 days, then we can move on to this next action step. So you can add as many conditions here as you want. Like some other good ones are, email is good, especially if this is going to be an email-based action plan. As we saw before, like there was like the phone number field. You could also do created. So if you wanted to say created less than 10 days ago and target kind of like a smaller group there. So you can add as many conditions here as you'd like. But once you feel like you've kind of narrowed this down enough, you can then add the action step. And we have 3 action steps. 2 of them are newer that you might notice are new. So we could reassign, add a note, and then start an action plan. But since we're just kind of keeping this simple, I'll just choose one of these, which is the action plan step. And we'll choose the buyer long-term nurture action plan. The last piece of this is the setting to have it run more than once or run multiple times. And my advice here is that if this is a communication-based action plan, I would just have this run once. And if this is more, as Jeremy was mentioning before, if this is like more task-based or more like kind of workflow-oriented action plan, you could probably safely have this run multiple times, but run more than once. Make sure that, if these are emails going out, that people are only getting, the same email once. So, and then after that, we just click save. And at this point, we can choose to just save it. If this is kind of like draft mode and you're still working on it, great. Or if you're ready for it to be turned on, you can say save and enable, and you'll see that it's now running. Once you have it saved, you can also share it out. which means that you could share it out to people with other Follow Up Boss accounts. If you wanted to share this out on like our Facebook group or what have you, you can share the automation here. But that's basically, starting from the top and creating one. So again, we can make these really robust. We can have multiple trigger events. We can have multiple actions. We can have tons of conditions, but it can also be really simple, as you're seeing here.
Yeah, and so let's tackle some of the new things that were added. And I guess we'll go chronologically. So the first things that were recently added were additional actions. Automations used to only power an action plan. All you could do a lot of things to trigger them, but the only thing that could happen, the only action would be to run an action plan. And so two new features were added recently. Caroline, you want to tackle those? And then Jeremy, you can jump in on those too.
Sure.
Yeah, so as Lee mentioned previously, it was only really, you could just start an action plan, which of course within action plans, there's multiple steps you can build out. But we were finding that a lot of times these, automations, there really only needs to be like one or two things that happen based on the trigger. So we started adding independent actions here, which we're going to continue to build upon. So the first two that we added is a reassign step. So I'll show you what that looks like. So in this example, we're saying when there's a new property inquiry and the lead is in a pond, and then we have some last communication filters, we can reassign this, and we would like to reassign it to a first to claim group. So that kind of gives it that second chance at like lead flow almost, where you can broadcast it out to a group. The other options for reassignment is you could actually reassign to a pond. You could reassign to a round robin group. You could reassign to just a particular agent. And you could also assign a lender or unassign a lender depending on, if you want to add a lender or remove a lender from the deal. So those are all of the options for the reassignment step. I think reassigning to a first to claim group, especially for a new inquiry, is probably one of the best uses of it, especially when you pair it with like a lead that's already in the pond. So the second one that we added is adding a note. So adding a note is going to add a note to the timeline, but there's also a notification option. And this is really similar to what you've seen within action plans or on the timeline itself. But this is going to just automatically add that note for you. So some really good uses for this is just giving the agent some context in terms of what has just happened. So in this case, we're saying, this person made a new inquiry. Here's the inquiry address. We're utilizing merge fields. And then we added the phone number and the email here, because what that is going to do is it's going to send an email to whoever we notify, so that they can, right from within their email, like call this person and they have the context of what they're inquiring about, et cetera. So it's really great to utilize all these merge fields. Another really great use for this I've seen is giving some like coaching tips or scripts based off of what happened. So you can automatically add a little script to the timeline that shows when the agent opens up this lead and begins to follow up. So those are the two new actions, and they can be added at the same time, and you can still start an action plan at the same time as well. So they can all be stringed together.
So I've got a dumb question for that. And I love the note thing. I want to add that when you make a note, you said this, Caroline, but I want to emphasize it, they get an email. So the new assigned agent gets an email that can say, an old lead from the pond just inquired on a property or something specific. And it really does help, in that coaching or scripting of like, oh, right, this is an old lead that requested a showing or was back on the site or whatever, just for that context to better help convert. But my question for you, Caroline, is because first to claim doesn't assign immediately, I assume that note is only done once the lead is claimed. Is that how that flow works?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So with the first to claim, and this is how it works when a lead comes into Follow Up Boss 2, or when you manually reassign to a first to claim group. Like if there's already an agent assigned, it's going to go to that agent until it's claimed. So the note will be applied before the lead could be claimed. So just keep that in mind. But that's why it's good to, if this is in the pond or something like that, it's good to add that additional context.
Cool.
Yeah, let me build on that for a second. So The first to claim, this automation particularly is something actually I built this with a client on Tuesday. Having that reassigned from a first to claim if they're in a pond really eliminates the possibility that notification of a new lead is going to fall through the cracks. If a lead is in the pond and new inquiry comes in, there is an option to notify everybody in the pond that there is new activity. But in this particular case, it just eliminates that guesswork. It's going to send someone in to a brand new lead is available, and that first to claim mentality is that you're going to jump on this. It's motivating, and you're going to claim it and run with it from there. And then to have the note populate as well, again, provides that context that this is an old lead that's being resurfaced. But the reassignment, this is the first time we've ever had an automatic reassignment tool in Follow Up Boss, and there's so many uses for it. Like sky's the limit here, and there's all sorts of possibilities from accountability sorts of automations that can reassign a lead if the lead isn't contacted at a particular period of time, to finding and resurfacing leads like this, or possibly anything else. There's quite a number of things that I've heard from clients that kind of go in between there to fill that gap and to take manual work off the admins on the team, and to make sure your leads are getting to the right people if they meet the right criteria.
Yeah, and to that point, Jeremy, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that also reminded me that, I mean, obviously if it's a pond, it's different because the pond is the assigned agent in a sense. But if you're not using this with the pond, you can use a condition as an agent. So if you wanted to have a condition that said, hey, if this lead is assigned to Susie, don't reassign, don't proceed. And I don't want to get too in the weeds on that, but I thought it was important to mention the idea that a pond is great because it's technically not assigned to anyone directly. But if you weren't going to use this in a pond, you might consider adding an inclusion or an exclusion of a specific agent. If, for example, you're the team owner and all the listing leads are with you, or whatever that scenario is. So you could basically say reassign this, as long as they're not tagged this or assigned to this person. But to our point earlier, keeping it simple, letting it run a couple of times, and keeping an eye on what it does, I think is the real magic here to what you're creating. But there is a lot that you can do with these. I think we're honestly, as much as we do this all day, every day, I think we're just discovering some of the cool things we can do with these. So
yeah, I think that there's a lot of folks out there with imaginations that can really grasp the additional potential here.
Awesome. So yeah, so those actions have been added. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say it would be awesome to hear from those folks who have kind of built automations they're super proud of, that are really filling a hole for them.
Yeah, and again, I'm just going to shamelessly plug sharing these with us. There's a really simple share option, and you can just share these right to Facebook. You can share them to us. Like, the most creative and like awesome automations that I've seen have all come from the people that are using Follow Up Boss every day. So definitely keep us posted.
Jeremy's been known to send swag to people that do stuff. Just saying.
I have been.
Tag Jeremy Smith in the Follow Boss Success community when you do. So yeah, that's great. We'd love to see your awesome automations. And then those actions were added, but we've also had another new addition in the triggers. Caroline, do you want to tackle that?
Yes, I would love to tackle that. So the new trigger that we've added is a deal stage being changed. So we have the stage of the lead being changed. That is a trigger as well, but this is particular to a deal stage. So when you choose this option, you're going to see your pipelines. Like, so for example, in this account, we have buyers and sellers, and then these are the different stages within your pipeline. So you can say when the deal enters the close stage in the buyer pipeline, do this. So this is the new trigger that we've come up with, and I've seen some really, really awesome workflows come out of this. People that are using kind of like deal checklists, transaction checklists. They'll trigger those being assigned to particular people based on that. And then one really simple thing that it can do is within an action plan, it could just, when the deal stage changes to closed, you can change the stage to close so that those are always in sync. I think this is another really great opportunity to use your note. So like you can just say, hey, congrats to the agent, you just closed your deal. So those are some new, this is the new trigger that we've come up with. And you can choose multiple. So we could say like, if it's the buyer closed pipeline or the seller closed pipeline, do this.
Yeah, that's really great. I've had a lot of people ask me recently about stuff like this because deals were added a fair amount later in Follow Boss, so they are a little bit of a separate thing. And I know that I've already talked to some people that are really excited about the idea that, yeah, as we move them to closed and deal, they can automatically go to closed to the contact stage. Caroline, to your point, adding the note, I think that's fantastic. That's such a good touch point, for your agents, just to say, hey, congrats, you closed the deal. And it's maybe a subtle reminder of like, hey, could follow up with these people now, or we need to ask for a review, or we need to, need to do something, or we could share this automation.
Yeah, I'll share this.
You don't
to
like
the
that
group
sharing thing much, do you, Caroline?
What do you mean? But yeah, I think that's great. We can just add a note. It changes the stage to close. And then this has 2 tasks. So in 30 days, it's just a reminder to the agent that they closed 30 days ago, maybe give them a call. And then in 90 days, there's a task to ask for a referral. So just to kind of keep that top of mind. But again, this is totally customizable. So you can add, subtract, add emails here, whatever. But yeah, I'll share this one to the group and here in the chat.
And just a note here, because Caroline showed that, because automations can work off of each other, if all this automation did was update the stage to closed, it would activate that post-closing plan that we showed at the beginning, because that's fulfilling the criteria for the next automation to happen. So it would activate that whole post-closing action plan with the additional steps. So that's another thing that you can do with your action plan, is have something happen at the end of one action plan that can trigger another through an automation.
Yeah, that's a great point both ways. One, it's amazing to be smart about that. And 2, be careful with that, because we don't want to trigger 9 things because the stage changed to close, and then automations that change the stage to close that trigger other things. But I think, again, starting small and getting a feel for how that all goes. One other great feature that I pushed a lot when automations first came out is the fact that one of the actions in an action plan is to pause a specific other action plan or pause all other action plans. And so that's another powerful tool, but again, something to consider, because if you're using it to trigger another, like a closed action plan, you want to be sure you're not pausing all other action plans. So just having a deeper strategy about all of it. And something Caroline did very quickly that I meant to point out earlier, but I really want to emphasize, giving both the action plans and, even more importantly, the automations a really good name. This automation changes the deal stage changes the contact record stage or whatever, but just so it's really clear, because the more of these you build, the more you have to come in here and go, oh shoot, what did I call that one? And so I think just being really, really smart with your names and making sure it's really clear what it does for both troubleshooting and future finding.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the other piece of advice here is that, you're building out a workflow. Like, it doesn't all have to happen at once. You can always start with one thing that you'd like to automate and then build upon that. So whether that's, eventually building out more actions within the same automation or adding a second one, but they can all really play super nicely. And, you'll get there progressively as you continue to see like what could be automated. I think you'll just kind of intuitively start to see those opportunities in terms of where can I really like speed up some processes, and where do I not need to, manage all these different tasks happening. And so it's definitely a progression.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
great.
definitely echo that.
Yeah, I'm such a big fan of these. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of people are trying to do some of this in Zapier, and Zapier is great to connect other tools. But I think a lot of people are trying to do things in kind of internally within Follow Boss and Zapier, and this completely eliminates the need, both the need, the knowledge of doing that, and the cost of that. But yeah, to the point of what everybody has said is really having that overall eventual workflow. Try a couple of these, but then having the overall feel. And this is an oversimplification, but I feel like using that lead flow and the automatic action plans and lead flow for the conversion makes sense. I think in my personal opinion, it's easier to start to think about automations more for existing, more for, oh, we changed the stage to nurture. This person, deal stage went to closed. You certainly can use these on new leads. But I think using that separation, especially to not confuse yourself at first with kind of what's doing what, really, I think it really makes sense to do things that way. And certainly the sky's the limit once you get more advanced. But that seems like a good best practice to get started.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk with clients about is that they do have some lofty goal for an automation. Map it out first, even if it's just a doodle on a napkin. Draw yourself a quick flow chart with some bubbles and arrows about what you want to happen, and then use some of the pre-built ones to kind of get you started and add things to it to see what we can accomplish obviously within what we've got built in so far. But we're also, going to be as Caroline said, we're going to be adding all sorts of cool new stuff to automations as we go down the road.
Yeah, I think these are such a great add. I was really thrilled to see these come, and I was really thrilled to see some of the additions that have already happened, and I can surmise some of the ones that are coming. And I think this is just a really fantastic tool. So I'm excited for that. If you guys have questions, drop them in. We're happy to tackle those, ideally again into the Q&A, just so we don't miss them. But unless we see any pressing questions, Caroline or Jeremy, do you guys see anything? Can you think of anything else that we did not cover?
There was one question in the chat that I just want to kind of touch on from Chuck about triggering an automation based on date. One of the things that I have done in this particular, in talking with clients about, managing transactions or managing a process is you can manage by the end date and work backwards. So if you do the calendar date function and you're storing a calendar date in a custom field, whether it's the close date or whether it's any other date that's necessary as part of a transaction or any other process, you can make the action plan fire ahead of time. So if you just choose close date here, Caroline, and just go. So if the close date is in 21 days, you can have the first task in an action plan fire 21 days out, and and then you can space them out. In an action plan, you have the ability to space them out, on a day-by-day basis, or you can put them all in numerical order so that at least there's a flow of those tasks as they appear on a contact record and in your task list. So there is a way to use an end date and work up to it. So I think that's another good option for folks who are working on processes and workflows.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually sort of knew that, but I haven't gotten into using that, and I'm a big fan of that. That's a really powerful one. Chanel has a great question. I want to tackle this. Asked about, can you also automate a new action plan to start once a previous one ends or is completed? This may not be the best workaround. My go-to, and I'd love to hear what Caroline and Jeremy think. What I typically do on that is I'll apply a tag at the end of the action plan and use that tag to run an automation, whether it's a different action plan or whatever's happening. I don't know if that's the best way to do it anymore. But when they first came out, what I would just do is make a tag at the end that said, new buyer nurture complete, and then new buyer nurture complete could trigger another automation to run a different plan. Do you guys have other ways of doing that?
That would be my recommendation if you know exactly what action plan you'd like to, start next. And then, of course, another option would just be to assign a task that says like, hey, review this contact, this one's complete, and then, start something manually from there. But if you know which action plan it is, I think the tag route is a really good workflow.
Yeah, and Caroline, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the other thing that I would do if it needed a touch is, yeah, add a task that says action plan complete, put them on a new action plan, or look at them or do something. Um, cool. Yeah, that's great. And I again would make a very specific tag. I wouldn't just say like action plan complete. I would say, buy or nurture plan complete or something really specific, just to make sure that you're not crossing buyer and seller plans or past client plans or some other plan there. But yes, is the short answer to your question.
One thing that
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say, one thing that I've done is that if a client really does want to chain them together and have the tag at the end of one start another one, at least add a notification as part of that transfer to notify the agent that that one action plan has stopped and another one has started, so that they at least get an email saying that this client has elapsed, has been in the system for 15 days and we're automatically starting a nurture plan, something along those lines, to at least give the agent a heads up that they can refer to.
That's a great idea. So Brooke has a question that just says, is there a workaround for launching action plans on 2 records at once, like spouses, for example? So if you want to have them as separate records, not relationships, but separate records, is there a shortcut, I guess is the question, to putting them both on that plan?
Yeah, I'm not right now. There's no shortcut there. So you can't mass apply like a automation, for example, which is what I think we're talking about. So you will have to manually go into each record. But what we do have coming, if you're using the relationships feature, we're adding more action plan support for relationships, so that you can have your action plans go to spouses according to, like, I'll just show relationships here. If they have a relationship over in this side of their profile. So that's coming soon, which should probably smooth that out a bit for you guys.
Awesome. That's great. And I don't necessarily recommend this as a workaround, but in the name of creative thinking, you could always do a tag that triggers an action plan. And then you could just add that tag to each of those records. But if it's coming, I wouldn't mess with that. But yeah, that's super cool. That's a great question. And I'm definitely excited about more relationship functionality in automations and in general. So, all right, very good. Well, we appreciate you guys being on. Please do check out the YouTube channel, subscribe, all that jazz. If you're not in the Follow Up Boss Success community, just search it out on Facebook and you should certainly join there. Share your automations, tag Jeremy so he can send you something cool. Sorry if I set you up for that, Jeremy. But
all right.
But yeah, always appreciate having you guys on, and we'll see you. Actually, next week we've got a product roundup webinar. We're going to be covering all the new additions in Q2 next Thursday at 1. So hopefully we'll see you guys then and on more office hours.